Welcome back to Nightingale's Motorcycles, Restorers and Metal Finishers. Right, so we're on the first stage of Beginner's Guide to Motorcycle Restoration. Now this is a kind of a broad spectrum uh, of videos, which I think I was gonna do it to a couple of parts, but I think we'll just run it and say this is the beginning, then we'll go part two, part three. So if you are watching and following it on new to the channel, it'll be good for you just to drop back on it. As I say, it's a beginner's guide. And as you've known over the past few weeks with some of the tips, I've been doing penetrating fluid to make up cheaper, rust surface remover, mild surface remover, engine degreaser. And I've always said there's no substitute to still have the brand names. But when you're restoring motorcycles like I do in a workshop or parts on a daily basis, I can't just go aerosols are very, they just disappear. So all these are a way of saving money. So a couple of questions first. I got one was a good one. What about a chain cleaner? Well, I was going to do these videos for workshop tips every so often, but because we're walking into a restoration, I think I'll show you probably another couple and see what you think of these. Right, so chain lubricant. Now we use it every week, every day probably in here, some form. And I think what I'll do is I'll just show you what I use. Been using it for years. So we'll take a bottle now. These are 750 mils. You'll see a lot of these I use, and the litre bottles. This is a 750 mil. So we're basing it up to this line here. So what I'm going to do first is just going to get a funnel and some 80W EP oil, just straightforward oil, and we're just going to put into that 500 mil. So we'll come up to about here roughly. There we go. So the idea of this one is to make it up cost effective, but it works. So this is straightforward mineral spirit, right? You can buy this off any of the internet sites, mineral spirit. This one's odorless, so it doesn't matter. But so what we're going to put then, we'll put 150 to that 500. So we're just about coming up to the line. So 150 mil to 500, 650. Standard trigger. Give it a shake, like the one I've done earlier there. Done, that's it. It's a fantastic consistency that, and I use it all the time on the trials bikes. Anyone's using a motocross bike, great way. You've obviously got your own brands, but this is how we do it in the workshop when we're using so much of it. So while we're on about chains, the biggest thing when you see people cleaning a chain like a trials bike or anything, and they'll take it to a pressure washer, blast it off, or while they just go up to the local club and they'll just give it a spray with some treatment, chain treatment, all the different brands out of there. But realistically, at some point you've got to take it off. Now, I appreciate if you've got like a road bike with a fixed link, so you're having to just jack the back wheel up, get a brush, wash it with something, and then apply your chain oil. When I say wash it with something, what I do is, for bikes we can take it off on a split link, I soak the chain in diesel. That's it, simple, diesel. You can put paraffin in it, it's fine. And then I brush it, hang it up, get the grit out of it and the waste. And then when it's in soak though, if you are mixing anything like diesel, or anything together, put the lid back on it, because if you're working in a workshop and you spark off, you have got some flammables. So apart from that, so you just, as I say, when you say road bike, just jack the back wheel up. If you've got some diesel in a little container, brush, clean it out. Obviously, they don't get the amount of wear and clay and muck on than a motocross or a trials bike chain. The only thing you got to remember is, I say diesel ideally because you could use petrol as a one-off, but anything with O-rings in the chains, then I play safer with diesel. That's it. Take the chain off and click. 'Cause all you're doing every time you find the chain, especially on your um, off-road bikes, so just looking like it just looks like it's been covered in material because it's getting so clagged up with all the crap, and you're just keeping it, you're burying in it and just spraying it. You're not getting rid of the grease, you're just blasting it in either with a pressure washer, or you need to take it off, get it soaked. And as I say, that's my tip for that, and that's how you make your chain cleaner up. It'll be fantastic. So that's an easy one for you. So the last one is a brake cleaner. Now, when you think about this, you could be up at a circuit, your local trials club. This is mainly for off-road bikes. Um, but if you are on an ordinary road bike as well, then you might notice that if you spray it with brake cleaner, because you might have picked up a bit, you might have even been washing your bike and you've got some kind of protector or a WD and it's gone on your disc and you're a bit worried. So you're trying to use a brake cleaner. You just have to watch it, because inside the middle of your disc, where you've got like a satin or a fork leg disc, you could get discoloration with it. So just think what it's doing is like a trials bike. You've got a squealing disc, or you feel you've got some oil on it or something, and you want to clean it off. All you're trying to do is you're using the aerosol, if you think about it, to blast the grit or the dirt out, and at the same time clean it. So the cleaning part of it is usually possibly an acetone base. So I make up my own in a smaller bottle. The reason is, right, we'll zoom in on this in a minute. It'll come under denatured alcohol, which is methylated spirits basically. So 50% methylated spirits and 50% acetone. Now, with that together, that's a very good brake disc cleaner. Now, why I said disc cleaner is, if you were soaking it in, saying you were blasting it into all the seals, the acetone might be a little bit too heavy for it, right? So what I'd use then is a white vinegar, but I wouldn't, because I'm only using, there's two things in a workshop. I've either got a disc brake, the disc itself that wants cleaning, and when you think that's what you spray, so what I do is I always do it with 50% acetone and 50% methylated spirits. And I don't put it to a trigger spray, I put it to a flip top. The reason being is I have a sponge, I'll put it on there, I'll wrap it round, and I'll spin the front wheel or the back wheel so the disc's in there, because I'm trying to take the contamination, which could be WD, it could be a silicone spray, bike after clean spray, right? Or you just gently picked up on something. But what I do is, while I'm doing that, I clean it first. So I'll put that onto there, clean the disc, turn it round. I'll turn the other side round. I'll put it on again. I'll have the wheel up and either get somebody there and just put your front brake on, just so the pistons start to touch, the pads touch the actual steel. And the reason is, just for a second, turn it round, and that bit of wetness will just go onto your pads, and then it'll flash off, right? Now, I use acetone based. I buy it in 25-litre drums, and we drink it in this workshop, literally, with the amount we use. It's one of the biggest products we use for cleaning anything before we do specialist coatings, like on these ceramic pistons. When we ceramic coat pistons or crankshafts, right? We put things in acetone and let them soak for a time, from exhaust systems, crankcases, anything, when we're doing specialist coatings. So as a brake disc cleaner, I'd go for 50% acetone and 50% methylated spirits. It's an easy one. I'll zoom in on that for you. The only reason at the bottom I put there is white vinegar, is because if you're blasting away, but we wouldn't be, because if it come in a workshop and there was something wrong with it, we're not actually trying to free all the bits up because it's probably a serviceable item, so it'd either want pistons in it and a seal kit in it. So you'd be taking it down anyway, cracking the caliper. I'm on about on the day or in the workshop now. You've just put it on, cleaned your disc, and then we've got rid of the squeaky brakes, or we've got the piece of grit out of it. Remember, you're using your aerosol, but you're blasting it on. It doesn't go very far in a tin, as you will know. So that's another tip before we'll go into the workshop. So we're into motorcycle restoration. So it's for beginners, this, but as it rolls on, it'll get a little bit heavier. I was going to, as I just said, I was going to do it in 2 parts, but it's too wide and I can't keep on doing the videos each week on this subject because you'll just get bored with it. But it's for the person who's starting off. And I based it on kind of the man who comes in here and saying, well, I'm thinking about getting a bike again. A bike he liked, a bike he had, a bike he always wanted, or a bike's been passed down to you. And you're looking at it and you don't really know where to start. You think you know what it wants to look like. So I'm going to try and cover this over 3 different stages. But first of all, we'll just go on to a modern bike, because what I say is, this is on a modern trials bike, is we're all restoring or servicing up. So we'll have a quick look at this, a modern trials bike. So one of the questions I'm going to cover with on this 3-stage kind of restoration, and how I see it in a restoration workshop, is people are going to ask the same questions, and they're coming to me and they say, if I purchase this machine, I've got chance of one, what should I look for? Which I'm going to cover that, of which I think things to cover, which I see on a daily, weekly basis. I think the main thing to look at is, if you take a modern trials bike, you probably know by now, if you're following the channel, that we do a lot of TLR 200s up. So we're trying to replicate a modern machine. We'll never get to this kind of, be it a 2-stroke or a 4-stroke like this one is. But if you look at the things we do with frame modifications, footrest back, and different tweaked engines and tuning and exhaust systems and lightening them and different wheels, all the things we do, we're trying to make it like a modern trials bike. Now, when I say about restoration, on a daily basis of people selling new motorcycles, especially trials bikes or motocross bikes, the question you always hear, and this is another question we get in the workshop, we're not diversing from restoration because it still in a way is restoration. Someone will come in and say they can't afford something like this or a brand new one, which they swing from £7,000 to £12,000 probably now. So they're looking for a good quality trials bike. Well, you know, let's face it, look what they do. You know, they go up rocks. You're always going to hear the adverts like, I don't use it anymore, I've no time to use it anymore. Fantastic, does all this, does that. But in reality, when you look at it, if you think of a dealership, and I won't wish it on any of them, we don't sell bikes, sell the odd trials bike trade-in or the odd imported motorcycle, usually older stock, like these machines here. I won't wish it on any of them, because when somebody saying they want £2,000 for a machine over the phone to a dealer, now, even though he's maintained it, which is usually meaning he's changed the oil every 3 times religiously, which usually means 10, it's gone through its life on 95% of the people. And I notice it more on trials bikes, where you buy something like this, and really all you ever need to know about is probably a 24-inch socket to adjust that back, the chain. You might have a 10mm spanner and some Allen keys, just to take your filter box out, squid your widgie foam filter, rinse it out, put it back in again. You drop the oil, but you'll probably never ever, for the average kind of guy, you'll never be thinking about, you know, changing the fork oil. You won't be thinking about the rear shock absorber in here, you know. And I find a lot of these bikes when they come in, and even if you're buying one yourself, because we're still talking servicing, restoration, that you could have this bike what comes in, and you're going to start spending a lot of money on it. So when I mean a lot of money, I mean you could be buying one of these private, but if it goes into a workshop, the dealer automatically will do these things. You know, it might be ready for chain and sprockets, so it could be 60, 80 quid, easy. Your pads might be under 50%, so a new set of pads, no big deal, but, you know, another 30 quid, 40 quid. Then you've got, probably when you lift the back end of this up when she's off the floor, you've probably got linkage play. That's solid, actually, just a fraction, right? But you could have excessive linkage, so it could be 80 quid. Then we look down things. If it's an older bike, this is a 4-stroke, but a 2-stroke, and she's got a rattle on top end, a replacement barrel or sending it away could be 300, 350. Never mind some of the problems I've had with, I had someone bought a little Beta 200, early one. There was water in the oil pump, the magnesium casing had gone, the thermostat and the sensor housing had the wrong thread in it on the radiator. The radiator had a leak. We've got wheel bearings which are rattling, which they're nothing then. Wheel bearings left to right, they're nothing. But time you add it up, add a set of tyres on it, especially if it's in a dealer where they, you know, they've gone past the sell-by date with the corners off, because usually the guys who are riding these things want sharp corners, another couple of £100. So on everything you touch, when someone says they're bringing a bike in, you could just think, right, 500 quid, like that. You could spend it. If you want to bring it up to a saleable bike and service it up, some fork oil in it, engine oil, in this case an engine oil filter, all serviced up, 500 quid goes like that. So when you have to start in this hobby, when we say restoration or servicing, you buy a bike for £1,000, you can 500 quid just like that, without really looking at a mechanic working on or a dealership working on it. You know, it is hard. It's a very hard way to go with these, and they can catch you out. But the idea of this video is going on to restoration of older motorcycles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of bikes in now. They're our own bikes, but they're only little bikes. But the reason I'm showing you is they're original. And where do you start or where do you stop with restoration? And this will come into the 3 categories which I'm on about. So let's move on to the next bit. Right, so the first question is we're going to start with is, and I've said this on loads of videos, no matter if you're just starting off, and this video is about people just starting off who've got limited tools, limited room, but they fancy having a go at one. What you've got to decide first is one, the budget, what you want to spend on a bike, which is just common sense, we know that. And how long are you going to run this project on for? Even if you're a builder who builds bikes, will do that. Or yourself at home thinking, right. And the 3 categories that I kind of placing it into is, 1, rideable classic. That's a bike what kind of turns up here outside, you hear the noise, you go outside, and it can be anything from a 250 Honda, a Yamaha LCs, right up to your big stuff, a Laverda 1000. And you can look at it, and it's not the best machine, but it's been serviced up and it's on the road. And like I'm going to say across the board with this, when you're doing these kind of bikes, let's base it on the 70s, 80s machines. Where are you going to go with it realistically? Is it for a Sunday run out, occasional ride out, or even if you put it in a van and take it to the Lake District, and when you get there you take it out the van and ride around like a lot of people do? Nothing wrong with that. Is it just, you know, got the patina on it, got its dings and dents, had a few things which are different, but you've taken bits off and brought them into me or someone equivalent to me where you live, and he does you a bit of ceramic coating or a bit of you know, painting, just slowly going through it, and you bolt your parts back on. They're the ones to me that are kind of the wisest men. So you look at it and you'll never get criticised because it's what it is. It's not a show pony, and that's a safe bet. But there's still ways which we'll talk about in a bit buying that machine if you already haven't bought it. So we'll move on to the next stage now. So the next stage is the biggest kind of the slice of the cake. And this can cover a multitude of things now. So you've got a bike, or you're buying a bike, and you've got it, and we'll take it's a bit like these, which is the next step up. Now I'm only showing you some little machines in, because one, they're both the same, so I'll bounce off one or the other. And through the video, we'll start to show you what to look for if you were going to buy one yourself. As I say, a lot of people out there, it's common sense, or you've been into bikes, but you've got to remember this video is about people who are a little bit nervy and don't know where to start. You know, they can be okay with everything. They'll soon learn it, they'll pick it up. So we'll start off with these little bikes. This is a little XC75 and another one here. And we'll go through the processes on these machines and this middle sector. So we're doing three. The one I've just said, rideable classic. Then this middle one, which is the biggest one before we come to the last one. And why I say it's the biggest one, because it can catch you out, can this? Because you've got a machine now, which is one step up. And you look at it and it's all original. We've gone from indicators, we've gone from headlights, we're looking at the wiring loom, we're looking at nuts and bolts. And as far as you can see, you can still see original colour. Now, these were imported machines. They get the Novas. Not on these ones, these were already done, but when we bring the imports in the office next door, we do the Nova tickets. And there's nothing wrong with imported machines. I think if we went to the next stage one, we might be talking a different league. But saying you bought one of these, you know, they can have been from the dry state of California, or they always don't seem to have been molested much. They're great. So when you start looking at them close up, you see a lot of things when it's one-to-one. When you're going to buy it off an auction site, and especially when you get the lines of, you know, only bid for it if you're going to purchase it. So really the idea is that when you bought it, you what you see is what you get, you're taking away. Now the trouble is with long-term restoration is there's a lot of things that can catch you out so much. So the first thing, and again it's common sense, is that you would be looking for a frame number and an engine number to match on a registered bike. So if it's had another engine in it, then really, if you're looking at to do up or resell again, it will be probably one of the first questions someone will probably look for. On some of the trials bikes, when you get into some of these which are registered, like your early Bultos and that, you might see a difference in variance from the engine numbers and the frames, but they are right. And the best way to start this off is by whatever you're thinking you're going to get, even before you've got it, if your mindset is there, is join a forum. All right, there's going to be a lot of sausages on there which are telling you this and telling you that. You're never, ever going to get away from it. But what you will learn, there'll always be people willing to help you. There'll always be shops like me, where you live, or a phone call away, to give you advice. And that'll start building a picture up for you to see how popular the bike is for spares, because you can still start doing that when you go interneting and looking on the sites. Availability of any spares, because whatever time you're going to put into this, you're probably going to put in twice as much on a night time surfing the net, especially if you're going into another sector as well for spares. So we'll move on to the next bit straight away, and I'll see what you think of this. Right, so in that sector, again, the middle sector, you probably start off buying a bike you wanted. Now, you've watched in probably videos in the past, and I always say this: whatever bike you want, you go with your gut feeling. If you want it, get it. Don't worry what anybody says, because at the time, and I'm going to go back many years now, decades back, and I ain't taking the mick out of any machines, and I probably wish I had every one of them back in here now. But what you'll find is you'll never win. And how this sector, this middle sector, gets worse is, you remember the guy I said who turns up with a bike who just uses it and it's in its original patina? He'll never really get criticise or anything. It'll just be like, spot on that, mate. You're always going to wear, no matter what you get. If it's a Gorelli 50cc sports moped, Laverda 1000, a CBX 1000, what I'm into, 6 cylinders. If you had £1 for every time someone says to you, I had one of them, right? You're going to get it. It just will happen. It's a known thing. So no matter what bike you've got, it's like, if you take the bike sector now, you watch a load of bikes parked up, all super bikes, fairings, everything you walk past them and you don't even glance. You look at them, but you don't. And then you'll see something like an RD200 or an LC350, and you'll stop and gather around it, right? It's no different now to this modern trials bike over there, where somebody goes, when you turn up at your local club, everybody's got that bike, or they've got a very similar one, and the only thing they can change on it is some anodized bits, right? That's why when we build the TLRs, it's people who are looking for an alternative, as well as probably one of these, but it puts a smile on the face because it's got character, right? I'm not saying these haven't got character, but you're in this mass production of bikes. So when you look at all the race bikes, you see a little LC3. Well, it's like watching cars now. All cars look the same, but occasionally you'll see a Mini and you'll go, God, look at that, it's fantastic, right? When you were that age, you probably thought they were crap, unreliable. I did this, did that, suffered from that. And that's the next thing you'll get with restoration. Whatever you pick, the first question will be, I had one of them, and then it'll either be, and it suffered from. Forget about it. We couldn't fix them then. They had stock faults. They didn't have the best welding. They didn't have, smoothness all the time. There was problems with them, but as we've gained knowledge and technology, we can put them right. So just stick to what you think you're having. Don't worry about anybody else and go for it. So we'll move on to the next bit. So common sense will tell you with any bike you're buying. Now, if you're going to someone who you've just bought something off online, it's difficult because what you can't do is, the first advice would be, and anyone would say is, decide what you want and then just remember that the more cylinders on it, the more money, the more costings right the way through, and more searching for parts. If it's an hobby where you want to go for a smaller bike and it'll end up as a Sunday ride out or a bit in your man cave, or it's one, as I say, was passed down to you, or it means something to you, that's different. So on a visual inspection, and you can't always do this because when you go to pick something up, it's either just stayed outside at garage, it's a chance you've done the cash and you're putting it in a van and you're taking it away. So obviously it would be to say that it starts, and on the video, you're asking someone for a cold start. So even if it's on an auction site, can I have it on a cold start? So you usually find them touching the pipe. It's freezing cold, 5-10 seconds. They put the fuel on, put a bit of choke and start it up. So that's great, but it doesn't really mean a lot. So where you can get to the bike and have a look at it, you've got to remember a lot of these will stick to Japanese. We'll try and keep away from British and Italian in this particular talking about restoration, in my field anyway, I think, because I think you'll play safe with a Japanese machine. The younger lads who come in who are with British machines, it's probably because the dad or the granddad have built a C15 or 650 BSA Trident, and the knowledgeable guys, so they've got home tuition as well. And there's another depth of knowledge with your British men, obviously. For the Italian stuff, you can get a bit confused with some of the electrical parts. A lot of parts have been superseded now and switch gear, which they work good sometimes when they were new. So sticking to Japanese, it's a play safe. And what I tend to think is, if you think anything you're going to buy, now the most popular, you probably think, and it is the most popular, and this is sticking to this sector of number 2, is LC350, RD200s, RD250s, and the rest of the two-stroke brigade. Over their life period of 40 years probably, they've probably had forks wrapped back here, they've had headstock damage, There've been insurance claims many times, not written off, but exhaust pipes, reaps, dents, all the rest of it, bars bent, headstock bent. So you've got to start looking close. And this is if it's a long term or any project. You've got your logbook, you've got matching engine and frame, you've got a bit about the guy you're buying it off, and you start to look for basic things. Now, I always think the best way to do it is like a pre-MOT. So when you lift the bike off the floor, you're kind of looking for things like when someone holds the back end and you're pulling the front wheel forward, you're trying to see if there's any play in the steering head bearings. Now, I'm not saying it won't have after 40 years or whatever, but you're just looking for telltale signs of any creasing, any frame identification being taken off, and silly things like when you look under the main nut to your castle nut, which you'll have a spanner like this, where somebody hasn't been ragging it with a screwdriver because it's been off so many times. Little things like the bear of these cups. You'll come back to things, basic things like spin the wheels, any free play, anything binding, left to right. We aren't worried about wheel bearings, left to right, but it's just another thing. Kind of get the spokes, again, like a pre-MOT. You go around it like playing the harp. For twangs, loose spokes, anything broken away from the spokes. Same with the back end, from the swinging arm back end, you're looking for left to right movement. Might be a bit on a wheel bearing, but the bushing here, especially if it's into a fixed frame like this, where it's gone past the bushes. And then in general, you know, turn the ignition on. Do you get a neutral light when you put it in neutral? Do the indicators, do the horns work? Try and look where the wiring loom is to see if there's any horrible, nasty bullet connectors. And then simple things like the ignition key. Does it fit the ignition lock? And does it fit the helmet lock? These are all things. Has it got an helmet lock? Because it probably would have had. So you can always get a key cut, but is the ignition the same or is it different keys? And then just looking for little things like frame identification. Now later on, all these little Japanese little logos and stickers, all original. I'll show you how to take these off properly rather than peeling them. Because sometimes when you're taking them back for powder coating, we have to remove these and we can slide them off rather than someone picking them off, because they mean a lot to this machine. So I think what we'll do is we'll move on to the next part and just tell you where I'd go next with this type of machine. Right, so another big one is the petrol tank. Don't be thrown over if it's been repainted and all looking shiny and first impressions look great. What you got to look for is still any blisters, especially on the Hondas. Any tank seams well in or anything happening, and then take the petrol cap off it and have a look down. And you want to see if it's clear inside. The thing is, if it isn't clear inside and it's rusty and it's been painted, probably a hell of a job to get that back. You can get it back, but the process is it's backwards. It's been painted in a rusty tank inside. You might have seen in any of my videos in the past on tank liners that when you look into these, you might find that there's a silver, which looks like a silver coating, like Amorite, and it could be one of the sealers that is the most common one for coming out. It's a single pack where we're using a 2-pack on ours. So also just a little scrape around the inside of the tank or in the top and just see if any of this silver comes away, because that's a big problem, especially if it's been painted. If not, you're looking at a tank to be cleaned out, and possibly the worst scenario, tank liner, and then going for paint. So it's a big deal. It really is. It's one of the most important things. Don't be fooled if they say it's just had a tank liner in it. You need to have a close look at it, because the next stock's a carburettor that'll just block up. The other thing to look for on the front forks is really pitting. Common sense again. Any leakage on the forks. If the stanchions are nice, you know, like this one as well. The nice stanchions, these. And we'll go on to this later on when we go on to on more restoration. I think at the moment though, talking you through it, getting a manual, the bike you want, the amount of money you want, let's face it, you're not going to make money out of restoring a motorcycle. And then if you bring a motorcycle into here, which is a very small percentage of customers who just kind of leave it and say do it, it's not just do it. This is another thing in this sector too, which is so important. And I'll talk to you about that now. And as soon as I finish this bit, we'll go back to the counter. And if you want free stickers and some key rings we're going to download now a sheet to show you a drop down, and if you're a subscriber you can just put it on and we'll send you them out. We're going to start sending them out next week, so you'll get them the following week. When I say about bikes and different stuff and what sector 2 say, you also, while we're in this part of 2, I'm going to cover people. You build your first bike. Let's just say the most popular one in here, right? RD250, LC350, 250, any of them type of bikes of that era. So there's loads been done. And if you do one, then you get another one, and you get another one. And what you find is, it's okay because you're happy with it probably, but you've got better at it from the colour of the cables, the parts which are genuine, non-genuine parts, which then when you move into 3 will come into the purist, which is the worst to be in when it comes to this, because you're spending money on your bike. You've got to decide, is it a rideable classic like number 1, number 2, where it's a different league like these two, where I'll come back to these on the next video, where would you go from this, because these are mint engines, they're all original, you know, they're absolutely fantastic. So where do you go from this to 3, because this is your high end of 2? So the reason is, if you start doing bikes up from home or from a garage or wherever you're working from, just as a run of it, not a restorer of concourse, because usually you've got 2 people, it's yes or no, it's high level restoration or concourse restoration, and they'll know everything, they'll know more than me on restoring bikes on that particular model. So what happens is, you'll get a Yamaha, say 250 or an LC, and the same thing happens. He doesn't have to go through all this what we've just spoke now, because he ain't bothered. He'll just rip that down like I would. A bike, a 2-stroke bike or a 4-stroke bike, would have it ripped down in 5 or 6 hours. Your frame goes off to a powder coater or a painter, depending what you're having. Again, it's all about the purist, because someone could say, want powder coated when it were new. So, you know, it hasn't got that, hasn't got this. So this sector now is where people say they do the Yamaha 250, 350, and they could bring it up here, and you don't say anything because it's good. And I've got some exceptional LC guys and restorers from here who make an absolute mint job, right? Mint job. I mean, I didn't even realise, when you look on our drop-down sheets, and I'll get close up here, when you look at green olive, there's the green olive, and look down the LCs. When you look how much is actually original green olive, from the stems, the kickstart, the headstock bolts, right the way through it, your brake levers, you can't believe how much is involved. Now, what happens is, in this sector 2, someone will send the tank off and they'll go to a place what does tanks, but then you'll get the man who up in sector 3, which will say, I don't want that type. I don't want them transfers. They're not thick enough. They didn't have this on when they were like that. They're over lacquered. It steps out too much. So if I did a club night here on LCs, what would happen is, again, they all line up and you're happy with your bike because you've put your heart and soul into it, which I totally agree. But then you'll get this type of character who will also, which one I know, has got a brand new LC 350, just out the box, literally as brand new, right? Out of a box. He also has an RD400 with 22 mile on it. So when you stand your one that you've done up against this, and you get someone like this man in sector 3 who'll lift the seat up and he can spend 3/4 of an hour looking under your seat to where your lead acid batteries there, where your wiring loom, your clips went, you'll probably drop you to the floor. Now, in that sector 2, what happens is, when you're restoring, you send your tank off to certain people, your vaporers like me, you might have some ceramic coating done in satin, and then you start buying bits in, and you'll realise probably after one that as soon as you meet this man, he'll come along and say, that wasn't original, that was a different cable, that you're going to get that. It's like when I first said to you about your bike, you pick your bike and someone will say to you, I had one, and they'll give you stock faults. So it's really harsh when we move into 3, because this 2 covers, you'll see what I'm on about. I'm trying to see it from my perspective, out the box, looking in, that you've got this stage where you go, one up from the first one, lovely, ride it. That one, lovely, ride it. Then I'm going to show you in the next video, if I went from that to number 3, how much that would cost. That I can get on it now and go anywhere on it, right? That's got a little 90 kit on it, that one. And the fantastic little bikes for motorhomes, you know, back of motorhomes, etc. So Sector 2 is really difficult. So we'll carry on the next video on Sector 2, because as I say, I'm breaking it into 3, and I'll show you what would go next, where we'd go with this, and eventually we'll get to 3. But I'm just saying, there's so many people out there that might have a collection of 8 bikes, Fizzes, RD200s, LCs, and you think you've spent thousands, yet this man could come along, or at a Showtime ground, and it'll go, you've wasted all your money. And it knocks you to the floor, because you've been following different blogs and what people say. But when someone's got a brand spanking new one, and at this moment, I actually know where there's one in its box still, which is just ripped up as if you were going to rip the box off, pull its polystyrene out and PDI it, right? Put the wheel in it. So that's how crazy it is. The great thing now, we're keeping it basic. We're not talking anything real technical. It's common sense. It's time spent. You know, we'll go on to a little bit, if you're looking at a single cylinder to a 2-stroke to a 4-stroke, what to look for next in this time going to buy one. Remember, time's the main thing, because you want to spend time with the bike. But now we'll go back to counter. And as I said, I think it was the last video, we've got some free stickers and some free key rings. And we'll tell you, we're going to do a drop down and tell you how you can get them for being a subscriber, which we do appreciate. As always, any projects you've got based in Scarborough, North Yorkshire, 01723 370399. If you've anything for us to test, from the smallest part to the biggest part, and we'll just keep going with this. We'll just keep on running it. I think it'll probably go to about 10 videos, but I can't overcrowd it, because it'll just be too boring, because with so many people up in the advanced sector of it, when we get into piston coatings and camshafts and race engines. But we'll just go with flow, and if there's any comments, please send them, because I'll either do some parts, so we'll put it in a video if you've been asking for something. And as I say, get yourself a manual, look through it. It'll start to take you some of the names and technical terms, if you're not that you won't already know them, but it just puts it together. So let's go and have a look at these freebies for you. Right, so some freebies. So we've got key rings arrived. The main thing is, if we're going to show you a drop down on this just after I've finished talking. So you'll tell you what to do. Just simply either phone in or put your email and address onto our piece of paper, which we're saying here. And we've got some stickers as well. The stickers will be from our crankshaft specialist coating side. Be a bit smaller than that, but the key rings are here. So we'll get them out to you. It'll probably start next week now. And we're going to run them right the way through March. So, because obviously people watching different videos, we have to stop it somewhere and then restart it again. So I think till the next time, we'll look at probably doing the next restoration video in a fortnight. And in between, I think coming up this week on Thursday, I've got a few tricks on fork seals and a couple of get out of jail cards with leaking fork seals as well. Something we use in the workshop. You don't always have to change your seals. There's issues with them, so we can get around that. We'll show you that one. Till the next time, thanks for watching. Do appreciate it, and appreciate all your comments. You know, as I try, we're just trying to be neutral here. We're just trying to go with the flow, keep all the customers updated on things, and especially new people what are coming in who would like to do restoration work. And you know, if we're all a bit of a petrol head and we enjoy it, it's fantastic. We don't have any really silly people on the channel. We're lucky. As I say, the restoration side opens up that market, so you've got to be in the happy medium from the first stage, the second stage, or that final bit. The final stage, you're in for the long haul. And you know, it can take long, but if you're not in a rush, there's always people out there, people like myself. You'll give them a ring, I'll give you all the advice. And I don't think you should get despondent on it, and certainly don't get with what you like, you buy it and enjoy it. So till the next one, thanks very much.